All right, let's talk about this week and what we're going to see inside of Mythic Plus. So this week, coming off of one of the easiest fortified weeks with Volcanic Spiteful, we're going to get Tyrannical Storming Raging. Tyrannical and Tyrannical Raging is an affix set that I think is going to promote playing with an Aug Evoker more and more. It's actually been kind of interesting what we've been seeing at the high end for what groups have been doing inside of Mythic Plus. So it seems like a lot of teams are actually starting to play around a lot more defensive-minded stuff. So we're actually seeing a shift from tanks, from a lot more Vengeance Demon Hunter to actually a decent amount more Prot Paladin. Because while Vengeance is a much tankier tank than Prot Paladin, fundamentally it looks like the season's going to come down to just like, can you live the keys? And so bringing things such as this composition where we're seeing where it's Prot Paladin, Resto Druid, Augmentation Evoker, that's actually been quite popular and quite common that we've seen, like at least in like the higher end keys so far. And so Tyrannical, now we're getting Tyrannical Raging, and that's definitely going to be an augmentation dream where the bosses are actually going to start becoming a lot more problematic. I think that dungeons like Throne of the Tides and Rise are actually going to get... Actually, I don't think Throne of the Tides is necessarily going to be that hard on Tyrannical, but I think Rise is going to be a lot harder on Tyrannical, as it's going to be probably for the entire season unless they nerf the timer again. But a large portion of Tyrannical's difficulty comes from the fact that you're just going to get, one shot or like multiple hit by bosses. Think things like all the bosses in Dark Heart Thicket, Archmage Soul, and Everbloom, that kind of stuff, where the texture of the dungeon is actually going to change a lot. For Storming, I would say mostly a non-affix. There are a couple instances where I can imagine Storming is going to be a bit tricky. For like Yasma and Manifest Timeways, I could see Storming becoming really annoying, especially whenever you need to just be in melee permanently and stuff like that. But yeah, so that's basically what we're going to see from the affix set. On top of that, we have a little bit of class tuning. The only stuff that really matters from the class tuning is the fact that Demon Hunter, Beast Mastery Hunter, and Assassination Rogue are going to get nerfed. I'm not like super shocked that this is happening. Ultimately, it looks like the Demon Hunter and the Beast Mastery Hunter are about 4 to 5% damage nerfs. I didn't actually see what the numbers on Sin Rogue were, but I think Assassination's in a spot where even if Assassination isn't good, that you can certainly play Outlaw. And I mean, even if you go to Sub-Creation, both A-tier specs, and the same thing if you go to like u.gg, both the A-tier specs are Outlaw and Assassination for melee. So even if Assassination did get nerfed into the ground, which it doesn't look like it did, it was just like a Kingsbane nerf, right? Then it's going to be fine. I think that overall, the meta is going to be mostly the same. Havoc Demon Hunter is definitely not changing too much. Beast Mastery Hunter looking like it's going to be also quite good, about in a similar position, because Blizzard's not super heavy-handed with the nerfs that we're going to end up seeing. Ranking the dungeons this week, I think that Rise probably goes back down into D tier. I don't think that dungeon is very easy on Tyrannical, just more broadly speaking. I think Everbloom probably goes into C. I could see Everbloom being in B. So the pros of Everbloom are the fact that the timer's generally pretty lenient, but the bosses are kind of hard. The second boss did get nerfed by a decent amount. What were people doing it on this week? On a 27, it was only being done on a 27. I think that Everbloom probably deserves to be in C tier down here with Throne of the Tides. I think Throne of the Tides is actually a much easier dungeon on Tyrannical affix weeks, because the harder parts of the key are like trash pulls, like being able to do double sentry and stuff like that. But the timer and Throne of the Tides and Rise are the only two that are really hard this season. So I think that that's probably going to influence what's going on there. I think Dark Heart Thicket probably goes down to B. I think that getting one shot in Dark Heart Thicket is going to be a lot more common of an occurrence. I'm thinking Waycrest Manor also B, in which leaves Galakrond's Rise, or no, Galakrond's Fall. Holy fuck, Galakrond's Fall and Blackrock Hold in A. Blackrock is a dungeon that you have so much time in. I've seen people time that key with 30 deaths. I timed to stay with 28. So even if like the bosses are harder, which they are going to be in Blackrock, like these are not easy bosses that you're dealing with. Fundamentally, it's not going to become an issue. Same with Galakrond's Fall, where you're like a very common experience in Galakrond's Fall is get farmed, have 15 deaths coming out of the second boss area, and pull the last boss with 15 minutes remaining. That's like a pretty common occurrence, and so I think that Blackrook and Galakrond's have to be just A tier because of that alone. And then Talzar, I think, is probably just I think it's just the easiest dungeon generally to do, because one, people are going to be a lot more familiar with it than other dungeons like Blackrock Hold, but two, the timer is also still pretty lenient. People are actually starting to play around with routes where you're pulling Colossuses as well, and I'm kind of interested in seeing what that looks like on a Tyrannical, because the mid pack is starting to be avoided more and more on like high level fortified because they'll one shot you. The reanimated honor guards are also starting to be avoided in a decent amount more because they just do a lot of group wide damage. Now this is probably not necessarily a thing on Tyrannical, but I wonder if more groups are going to start playing Colossuses, and that's definitely something we're going to see as the season progresses. Is kind of like how the routes evolve. But overall, that's what we're going to see this week in Mythic Colossus. It's going to be Tyrannical, Storming, Raging. Please pray for my vault as well, and I will pray for yours, and I will see you guys in next week's video.